Dear Madam Chair, distinguished members of the committee, thank you very much for the possibility to speak before this important committee. The Ombudsman of Republic of Bulgaria has been accredited with status A in March last year, so this is actually my first appearance before a UN committee, and I really feel very honored and I take this task very seriously. I would like to address you first with my comment that Bulgaria has been party to CEDAW Convention for quite many years now. However, we have not yet achieved full compliance with this important international instrument, in our opinion, and further efforts are still needed, both in legislative terms and also as far as the measures for efficient implementation of Convention are concerned. I would start by saying that in 2018, the Constitutional Court in Bulgaria ruled on the incompatibility of the Istanbul Convention with the Bulgarian Constitution, which actually hindered its ratification, which was predecessed by a really intensive campaign for the ratification of the Convention by civil society, by the government, and also by the Ombudsman institution. This fact, this hampering the possibility to ratify the convention actually triggered some amendments in February last year in the Criminal Code, and also some amendments in the Protection Against Discrimination Violence Act, which could be assessed as a first positive step. These amendments in the Criminal Code actually refer to amendments related to addressing the issue of domestic violence, which is related to incriminating domestic violence and some of its forms of implementation. What I can say about these amendments is that they are not sufficient, and further legislative measures should be adopted by all means. First of all, in order to incriminate all the forms of domestic violence, not only physical violence, but also sexual violence, but also economic violence, and also psychological violence. There are already some efforts to incriminate psychological violence in terms of criminalizing the stalking, but my opinion as Ombudsman is actually that the definition of stalking is not sufficient in order to go after a perpetrator of such a crime, and the definition should be fine-tuned, and also all forms of psychological violence should also be addressed in the Criminal Code. Last but not least, in my opinion, there is a problem with the definition of domestic violence as a crime according to the Criminal Code, because what is needed is a systematic nature of the crime. In order to consider domestic violence as a severely punished crime in the Criminal Code, it is necessary that it's predecessed by at least 3 consecutive acts of domestic violence, which should be registered. In my opinion, as Ombudsman, the systematic nature of this crime should be removed from the Criminal Code, and it should be incriminated as only domestic violence act as in the Criminal Code. Also, I must mention that not only legislative measures are needed in order to relevantly address domestic violence. There are also some measures which are not legislative, but are also important. For example, a better mechanism of coordination on the level of governmental institutions to address state policies and the implementation of laws against domestic violence. Effective prevention measures, awareness and training of professional programs, sustainable practices of investigation and subsequent monitoring of orders of protection, execution, improvement of support facilities for victims of domestic violence. I must say that the number of women victims of domestic violence in Bulgaria is growing in the recent years. And this requires a critical approach by both general public and state authorities towards this abuse. There are no official statistics, and this is a very serious problem. But also, if only you look in the publications of the media, you will see that at least 2 women per month last year have lost their lives because of domestic violence. Also, some 30,000 women have called on the hotline to report about cases of domestic violence, which means that the problem should be urgently addressed. Also, on the International Day of the Elimination of Violence Against Women last November, together with civil society organizations, as Ombudsman, I started a campaign against domestic violence, which launched a targeted reception desk for women victims of domestic violence. I have also sent a recommendation to the regional governments in all the country in order to make them reassess the need to open crisis centers for women victims of domestic violence. The thing is that in Bulgaria there are only 13 such centers in the country, which are always full. For example, for Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria, where live at least 2 million citizens, we only have one center with 8 seats, which is really, I don't even believe that this is the number. So this is really too low, and the recommendation of the Ombudsman at this time is for the establishment of sufficient number of crisis centers for the accommodation of victims of violence, with the aim to reach a balanced geographical coverage throughout the country. At least 28 are needed, in my opinion. According to my opinion, it is also necessary to improve sustainability to practical skills of professionals in institutions for working with victims of domestic violence, gender-based violence through serious, systematic and targeted training. Social, healthcare workers, as well as police officers still need adequate training to better understand the problem and be more responsive to reports of victims of domestic violence. It is also important to assure adequate, accessible, timely and free of charge rehabilitation programs for victims of domestic violence. I would also give an example. For example, even in the cases where a case is referred by the court that the perpetrator of domestic violence is supposed to visit aggression management programs, nobody can actually make this person to visit them. So this is something that should be targeted in the law so that such recommendations could be absolutely obligatory for the perpetrators to go there. The second issue I would like to address today is related to the rights of Roma women. This is also an issue that concerns the Ombudsman. In my opinion, and I have several times expressed concerns on the low level of education and the early dropout from schools of Roma women and girls, early marriages, poverty and unemployment, as well as the high level of domestic violence there due to a big number of prejudices and stereotypes. In order to successfully address these issues, I think multi-sectoral measures should be adopted in order to achieve better education, social environment amelioration, healthcare access improvement, poverty reduction, better chances for personal development, and increased participation in public life for Roma women. 2 years ago, we have started a campaign called No Charges in the Kindergarten, so that actually persons from Roma women, especially Roma girls, could go earlier to schools in the preschool forms of education, so that they're better prepared, especially if they don't speak, if Bulgarian is not their native language, so that they can perform better in schools. But of course, the early forced marriages are quite a problem, and this should be regulated in a better way. So these are some of the issues that I have identified as very serious problems concerning domestic violence in Bulgaria. I must conclude by saying that the resolvance of this issue is hampered by a big number of stereotypes and prejudices, and actually, although some 79% of Bulgarian citizens recognize the problem of domestic violence according to social surveys, actually I think that there is still not good understanding about the problem, there is hostility, and also there is fear among women to report about cases of domestic violence, which actually hampers them to look for help. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kovacheva. Thank you.